Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy and The Inside Job. Is it just me, or is there some kind of connection between these titles? I don't know, it's just a vibe of some kind of espionage, I guess. I guess it fits then that these episodes both include a Plankton plot that involves him attempting some subterfuge. Guess we were due for some Plankton episodes given how he wasn't so prominent in season 6. Just kind of funny that just like Chum Bucket Supreme and Single Cell Anniversary, they put both of the Plankton episodes together as sisters. Alright, that's enough yapping. Let me just move on to the part where I say, as always, thank you to everyone watching today. I always love seeing that y'all are enjoying the video in whatever form you do it in. And now, let's just get right into it. Okay, I've miraculously held my tongue long enough and I can no longer. Someone's in the kitchen with Sandy. So, I guess Season 7 has decided to completely give up on trying to return to its strong beginning, huh? Oh yes, this is an episode I do not enjoy. No, no, no. With this episode, I question the entirety of the writing process. Pretty similar to the episode I just finished tearing the shreds, Stuck in the Ringer. These episodes have got another similarity too. They both infuriate me. Wonderful. Someone must be laughing at me now, because what is with these episodes focusing on characters that I really want to be focused on being incredibly disappointing? I've already talked about this when it comes to my boy Gary, and now I'm seeing a Sandy-focused episode, and it's this? My lord. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy actually generates some interest from me as we begin things with Plankton, and the reason it does so is because this beginning tells me that we might be seated for an interaction that we've never seen. Sandy and Plankton. Hell yeah, I'm down. Of course, this episode will go on to squander this potential, but theoretically, I don't know this at the outset. Plankton's plan here in this beginning scene, hiding inside a bun, makes literally no sense, but we move. How no one sees Plankton throughout this scene is also extremely questionable, but if I was gonna nitpick the episode this hard, I'd be here all day. Considering I literally just went ham on Stuck in the Ringer, I'm a bit exhausted, and I'm not sure I can muster that sort of nitpicking spirit. I can try though, just a bit. And as such, I want to say something about the writing, though I wouldn't consider this a nitpick. Not exactly, since it does end up being the episode's plot. But anyway, the entire idea that Sandy wears her fur like a suit makes so little sense that I can't even begin. And before anyone says it, yes, I'm familiar with skin theory. I think it's nonsensical and unamusing at best. Anyway, Sandy wearing a fur suit, and yes, I know what I just said. Firstly, this makes no sense with the existence of an episode like Survival of the Idiots, but I know that this critique doesn't hold much water since this show has no consistency. I can tell that this was done to subvert expectations and be a joke in itself. Like, I feel like this episode was created with the thought of Sandy wearing a fur suit first, and then the rest of the plot came later to justify that idea. But anyway, my second issue. This plot also feels like an excuse to make the fact that Plankton is present in Sandy's shower without her knowing feel less extremely creepy than it is. And I don't know about y'all, but that doesn't work for me. So now the episode already weirds me out in like 3 different ways. God, this is hooky all over again. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy makes me realize just how much I've missed seeing Sandy. Seeing her for more than just a couple of minutes for once is such a treat. I just wish it was under better circumstances. When she breaks down the door and swears to get whoever stole her fur, I'm with it. Like, I'm ready to see her get all about that action, you know what I mean? Like, I want to see Sandy kick some microscopic ass. But then she starts going through Bikini Bottom, furless, and my intense rage for the townspeople cemented and stuck in the ringer begins to flare again. I really, really need to know where the joke is here. Where is the joke in Sandy having her fur stolen, which is supposed to be the equivalent of her clothes, and when she tries to get it back, no one helps her and everyone laughs at her. And not just laughs at her, but also shames her and calls her a rat, a chipmunk, and a hairless goat. Like, this is immensely frustrating. And seriously, it could be argued that this is a poorly executed xenophobia allegory. I mean, Sandy is the only one in Bikini Bottom with fur, and people are calling her names that are derogatorily rooted in her species. This isn't really a stretch. Now, I don't actually believe that this episode is trying to be a xenophobia allegory, but frankly, I think that being a failed allegory is a nicer interpretation than saying that the writers completely neglected to form one single critical thought about the implications behind this story. I think it's more likely that this meant to just be a shallow people ridiculing someone different than them plot, but there was no consideration of the fact that this is literally a textbook xenophobia allegory. It's like pulling things from the real world without thinking about it. That's what it feels like to me. Essentially, this is very similar to the problem that I have with Sunbleached, except worse, because of how enraging the execution is here. Like, even without considering the xenophobic undertones, this entire segment of the episode is just extremely unpleasant because Sandy has done not one thing wrong, like, at all. Just like the previous episode spent so much time tormenting SpongeBob, this episode does the same to Sandy. It's ridiculous, and I fail to see how this is even faintly amusing. As for Plankton's part of this story, when he walks around wearing Sandy's fur, it starts out entertaining enough. Mr. Lawrence's southern accent is hilarious, and also clearly improved upon in the Cosmic Shake. That's a fun game, I should replay it. Anyway, once Plankton gets to the Krusty Krab, things start to drag. The first interactions he has with SpongeBob are actually entertaining, but that doesn't last. Does, "ooh, try again," ring a bell? Well, this part doesn't actually annoy me, because it feels satisfying to see Plankton get so upset, given that my rage in this episode is being partly directed towards him as the cause of this whole situation. But this part is very repetitive, and I feel like they could have done more here. Once Sandy shows up, the confrontation between Sandy and Plankton is at least somewhat entertaining. I very much enjoyed seeing Sandy kick Plankton's ass and save the day. Very gratifying considering the bullshit we've seen her go through this episode. Oh, how I wish the episode ended here. Like, Clownfish Capers was planned, we could have ended it here. But no, no. We can't be having too much fun in this episode apparently, because even though Sandy has done nothing wrong and saved the day, she gets arrested at the end of the episode because she wasn't wearing her fur, which, mind you, is the equivalent of her clothes. Fucking why? Literally what? Why? Who even? I'm so lost, man. This last little stinger makes me so extremely upset, and I leave this episode with an awful, awful taste in my mouth. Literally, what was the reason? You know, this episode would have been improved immensely if it had leaned more into a horror comedy aspect. And yes, this is my bias speaking, but just walk with me. Like, Plankton walking around in a Sandy suit, that's horrifying, but also hilarious, in theory. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy didn't play with this idea at all, and that's such a terribly missed opportunity, and I don't get why that is. This is a far better alternative than the trashy plot we got. The episode also should have done away with the entire part where Plankton is present for Sandy's shower, because that was weird as fuck. The only really good thing in this episode was Sandy solving everything herself, so I would keep that. Reduce SpongeBob's role considerably, scrap the borderline offensive ending, and have Sandy kick Plankton's ass thoroughly. That would have been so much more entertaining. In fact, I think I just thought of a better plot. Imagine if this episode starts out with Sandy looking unsettling and acting increasingly weird. We then get the reveal, eventually, that it's Plankton in a Sandy suit, but with no answers as to where Sandy is. Sandy then comes in and kicks Plankton's butt, saving the day for both herself and any other characters involved. See how much better that is? Alright, let's bring it back. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy is immensely frustrating. Actually, it's infuriating, and fresh off the heels of Stuck in the Ringer, I'm hardly in a forgiving mood. This episode is so disappointing because of the promise of new character interactions that was ultimately wasted. The episode is just nonsensical in certain places, especially involving the Bikini Bottomites. This season is already showing inklings of a trend of asshole Bikini Bottomites, and that's ridiculous. 5 episodes in, and I've already wanted to burn down the town twice? Not a good look. This episode also just felt like it had a personal vendetta against Sandy or something, and it's worse because Sandy does not appear so often, so in one of the few chances we get to see her, this is what they decide to do with it? Absolutely ridiculous. There are some redeeming qualities to this episode, but they do not improve this episode at all, so I can only acknowledge their existence, and that is exactly why this episode is going in the abysmal tier, where it comes in with a score of 1.5 out of 10. This is the second abysmal tier episode in a row, and our third one overall. That's honestly impressive, considering that this tier is extremely difficult to reach. Next up is The Inside Job, which thankfully is a palate cleanser after those 2 hot steaming piles of garbage. This episode consists of another Plankton plot, which I suppose could be considered repetitive since we just got an episode with a Plankton plot, but that would be jumping the gun, I feel. Just because the plot is about Plankton trying to steal the formula doesn't necessarily mean that these episodes have any other similarities. The Inside Job begins fine. We get the typical dynamic between Plankton and Karen, which is fine with me. Plankton acts like he's better than Karen and then swiftly makes a fool of himself. The fact that this guy was showing his son the chum bucket so that he could revel in its failure is really funny. After this, Karen proves to be Queenie once again, as she comes up with a pretty good plan for Plankton to steal the formula. Read Mr. Krabs' mind using an invention she's created. The part where Plankton is sailing in the air towards Mr. Krabs and people keep walking in the way is pretty funny, especially once it's revealed that the Mr. Krabs standing there is actually a cardboard cutout, and Plankton ends up entering SpongeBob's brain instead. This almost feels like a callback to The Chaperone, or As Seen on TV. The imagery of this episode is pretty neat, I gotta say. I liked the design of different parts of the brain, or head, I guess, being plugged in. When Plankton unplugs SpongeBob's eyes, I'm then reminded of how much I really wish I was watching Planet of the Jellyfish right about now. Wait, that makes it sound like I don't like this episode. So far, not the case. Anyway, I've noticed that at least twice this episode we get off-screen quips from characters, first Mr. Krabs, then Squidward. And I like this because it means we get more dialogue humor, and also I just think it's neat. This also has the effect of making the episode feel more full, even if the characters don't physically show up. Plankton causing problems with SpongeBob's workday is also a good source of humor. SpongeBob making a Patty blind is pretty amusing, especially when he gets his sight back and he flips out about it. And then when Plankton takes out SpongeBob's ears, I thought that this was a clever way to avoid revealing the formula, as this show tends to do. I love how Plankton just goes, "I hate my life," when this fails for him. Additionally, the ending of this hearing bit is another great use of that awkward humor that completely outclasses most of Season 6's attempt at it. So maybe Season 6 really was just a learning and experimentation stage for using this kind of humor, because that's already like 3 times now that it's been done well this season. Anyway, Plankton eventually decides to just try and get the information from SpongeBob's brain directly. Despite how scientifically inaccurate this is, I do love how SpongeBob's brain is segmented into all of these different types of information that are so very him. It was nice to see jellyfishing in there too, since it's been a while since we've seen SpongeBob jellyfish. When Plankton goes inside the brain, like literally inside it, once again we get some neato designs here with the inside of SpongeBob's brain looking like his house, just made out of brain matter. Yeah, it's gross, but it's visually interesting, and it doesn't elicit any kind of visceral reaction from me. It's more gross in theory. And then I really loved the sounds that make Squidward upset bit, and I love that SpongeBob put the secret recipe in his heart. Yeah, it's cheesy, but it's also cute, and I like cute and wholesome. And then the inside job takes a turn as Plankton not only gets the recipe by reading SpongeBob's heart, but he gets his personality and characteristics too. The way he turns into a mini SpongeBob is hilarious. Mr. Lawrence's imitation of Tom Kenny's inflections is amazing. Same with Bill Fagerbaki's when Plankton proceeds to get turned into a mini Patrick, which wipes out his knowledge of the recipe. And I thought that this was a neat end to the episode. The only thing I didn't care for was how Karen said this was the result, or that this result was Plankton's fault, since for once, literally none of the things that went wrong here were his fault. Like, they just seemed to be a unintended side effect of a perhaps untested invention, but that's a really small nitpick. The inside job was a simple and fun episode. Yeah, it starts off a little slow, but once Plankton sets the plan in motion, things stay pretty enjoyable for the remainder of the episode. There's also some really good humor in this episode, which I love a whole lot. There really isn't too much to say other than that. So this episode is being put in my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8.5 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this review with some closing thoughts of mine. Thank God the inside job was a good episode. I'd lose my damn mind if I had to deal with 3 horrible episodes in a row. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy is surprisingly not all that infamous. It's disliked, but it's also kind of forgettable, I think. It's not forgettable to me because I dislike it so much, but I don't usually see people bring this episode up in conversations about the worst episodes in the show. Unlike Stuck in the Ringer, which is up there with all of the other big hitters like One Course Meal, A Pal for Gary, Pet Sitter Pat, Boating Buddies, etc. Speaking of A Pal for Gary, I'm reviewing that next week. Yeah. Well, at least I can say that Season 7 is never boring. I suppose I shouldn't say never, but so far it's been keeping me on my toes. Alright, well, I'm gonna cut things off here, and I suppose that means I'll see you all in the next review.